My name is Emma Carter, and this is the story of the biggest mistake of my life. 10 years ago, I thought I was running toward happiness. Instead, I was running away from everything that truly loved me. I grew up in a comfortable home in Chicago. My parents were not rich, but they worked hard to give me a good life. My father owned a small repair shop, and my mother worked as a nurse. They loved me more than anything. But when I was 20 years old, I fell in love with a man named Ryan Walker. Ryan was handsome, charming, and adventurous. He always talked about freedom, dreams, and living life without rules. Every time I was with him, I felt like I could fly. My parents didn't like him. He doesn't have a stable job, my father warned. He isn't thinking about the future, my mother said gently. I hated hearing those words. I thought they were trying to control my life. I thought they didn't understand love. One night, after another argument with my parents, Ryan took my hands and looked into my eyes. "Come with me, Emma." "What do you mean?" "Let's leave. Just you and me." My heart raced. "Leave everything?" He smiled. "We'll build our own future." At that moment, I believed him. I believed every promise. I believed every dream. And that night, I packed a suitcase and left my home. I didn't even say goodbye. As the bus carried us away from Chicago toward New York City, I looked out the window and cried. Not because I was sad, because I thought I was starting a beautiful new life. I had no idea those tears would become the first of thousands. New York welcomed us with bright lights, crowded streets, and endless noise. The city felt magical. Ryan and I rented a tiny apartment in Brooklyn. The apartment was old. The walls were cracked. The bedroom was barely big enough for a mattress. But we were together, and that seemed enough. At first, Ryan found temporary construction jobs. I worked at a coffee shop near Manhattan. We earned little money, but every night we sat together on the rooftop of our building and talked about our future. "We'll get married one day," Ryan said. I smiled. "And have a family?" "Of course." Those words made me happy. I trusted him completely. Months passed. Then years. Life slowly became harder. Bills piled up. Rent increased. Food became expensive. The city that once looked magical began to feel exhausting. I worked longer hours. Ryan changed jobs constantly. Sometimes he worked. Sometimes he didn't. Whenever I asked him about our future, he became irritated. "Stop worrying so much. I'm just asking. You're acting like your parents." Those words always hurt. But I stayed silent. Because I loved him. Or maybe because I was afraid to admit my parents had been right. 3 years after we ran away together, I received a phone call. It was my younger sister, Sophie. I hadn't spoken to my family in nearly 3 years. My hands trembled as I answered. "Emma?" Her voice sounded broken. "What's wrong?" There was silence. Then she began crying. "Dad had a heart attack." My world stopped. "What?" "He passed away this morning." I couldn't breathe. The coffee cup slipped from my hand and shattered on the floor. "No." I sank onto a chair. "No." The tears came instantly. I hadn't seen my father in 3 years. 3 years. I remember the last thing I'd said to him. "You don't understand me." Those had been my final words. Not "I love you." Not goodbye. Not even "thank you." Just anger. And now he was gone forever. I bought a plane ticket immediately. But when I arrived in Chicago, it was too late. The funeral had already happened. I stood beside my father's grave as rain poured from the sky. My mother stood several feet away. She looked older. Much older. When our eyes met, tears rolled down both our faces. I wanted to run into her arms. I wanted to apologize. But years of pain stood between us. "I'm sorry," I whispered. She nodded. but I could see the sadness in her eyes. Some wounds never fully heal. When I returned to New York, everything felt different. I missed my father every day. The guilt followed me everywhere. At work, at home, even in my dreams. Ryan didn't understand. You need to move on. Move on? How could I move on? I had lost years with my family. Years I could never get back. Slowly, the distance between Ryan and me grew larger. We argued more often. We laughed less. The future we once dreamed about seemed to disappear. One evening, I came home early from work. The apartment was quiet. Ryan's phone sat on the kitchen table. It suddenly lit up. A message appeared. I wasn't trying to spy, but the words were impossible to ignore. I miss you already. Last night was amazing. My heart stopped. I stared at the screen. Then another message arrived. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. I felt sick. When Ryan came home, I confronted him. Who's Olivia? His face turned pale. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I knew. I didn't need an explanation. The truth was already written across his face. Emma. How long? He looked down. 6 months. 6 months. Half a year. While I worked overtime. While I struggled to pay bills. While I mourned my father. He had been with someone else. I collapsed onto the couch and cried harder than I ever had before. Ryan tried to apologize, but his words sounded empty. The trust was gone. The love was gone. Everything was gone. A month later, he left. Just like that. The man I had sacrificed everything for walked out of the apartment carrying 2 suitcases. And he never came back. I sat alone in silence. The apartment felt colder than ever. Outside, New York continued moving. Cars honked. People hurried down the streets. Life continued. But mine felt shattered. Every night I cried myself to sleep. Sometimes I looked at old photos of my family. Sometimes I looked at photos of Ryan. Eventually, I stopped looking at either. Both reminded me of loss. Years passed. I focused on work. I moved into a smaller apartment. I built a quiet life for myself. But loneliness became my constant companion. One winter evening, I received another phone call. This time it was my mother. Her voice sounded weak. Very weak. Mom, I've been diagnosed with cancer. I closed my eyes. The world felt cruel. First my father. Now my mother. Why was life taking everyone I loved? I immediately flew back to Chicago. This time, I refused to stay away. I spent months caring for her, cooking meals, driving her to appointments, holding her hand during treatments. One night she looked at me and smiled softly. You came back. I started crying. I'm sorry for everything. She squeezed my hand. I forgave you years ago. Those words broke me, because I had spent years believing she hated me. Yet she had forgiven me long ago. For 2 years, my mother fought bravely. Then one quiet morning, she passed away in her sleep. I was beside her bed, holding her hand. When the nurse told me she was gone, I felt my heart crack all over again. I had finally returned. I had finally rebuilt our relationship. And now she was gone too. At her funeral, I stood beside the graves of both my parents. Snow covered the ground. The world was silent. I whispered through tears. I'm sorry I left. The wind carried my words away. But no answer came. Only silence. Today I am 35 years old. I live alone in a small apartment overlooking the city skyline. Every night the lights of the city shine through my window. They remind me of the night Ryan and I arrived here full of dreams. Back then, I believed love was enough. I believed happiness meant following my heart without thinking about consequences. Now I know life is more complicated. Love matters. But so do family, trust, responsibility, and the people who stand beside you when everything falls apart. Sometimes I sit by the window and imagine another version of my life. A version where I didn't run away. A version where I spent more time with my father. A version where my mother never cried herself to sleep worrying about me. A version where I said goodbye properly. But life doesn't give us the chance to go back. We only move forward. And sometimes the hardest thing is living with the choices we made. On rainy nights, I still cry. Not for Ryan. Not anymore. I cry for the years I lost. The memories I missed. The hugs I never gave. The words I never said. If I could speak to my younger self, I would tell her this. Running away feels like freedom. But freedom without wisdom can become a prison. And the people who love you most are not always your enemies. Sometimes they are the ones trying hardest to protect you. I learned that lesson too late. Now all I have are memories. Memories of my father's smile. My mother's gentle voice. A young woman running toward a dream. And the tears that followed her for the rest of her life. As the city lights glow outside my window tonight, I wipe away another tear and look toward the dark sky. Somewhere beyond the clouds, I hope my parents know how much I love them, how much I miss them, and how sorry I am. Because even after all these years, that is the truth that still breaks my heart. I ran away with my boyfriend searching for a better life. Instead, I lost the people who loved me the most. And that is a sadness I will carry forever.